Well, good day to you. It is Friday, September the 16th, and I hope you're having a wonderful start to your weekend wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. Of course, if you're new, welcome you back. If you have been here before, stay as long as you want, come and go as you please. But in the meantime, if you want to know more about this information, check out the links that I provided in the description portion of these videos. There's a lot of really good information on those websites, so you can educate yourself better about this and see if there's any truth to it for yourself at least. So it's there for if you want. Look into it for yourself if you want or not. Now, Luke Williams, Spirit Watcher 178, and is it Yatara Anna Marie Rebella commented since the last time I put a video up. I want to thank you guys for commenting and asking a question. In the case of Luke Williams, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys joining the discussion. Always encourage everyone to join the discussion as well by posting comments. You can ask questions. I'll do my best to try to answer it. If it's a comment that I think that we can all learn from, I'll try to address the comment that way too. But you can always email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. And some people have done that this month, and it's been kind of nice to get emails from time to time too. So you can do it that way if you want. Now, Luke Williams posted a couple comments. Let's take a look and see what he had to say and see if we can learn from this. All together. Hello, question for you, sir. Or as Donald Trump would say, but sir, Alice Bailey mentioned true change occurring after 2025. There is a slight stir online about the significance of that year as well. You also mentioned vaguely, but perhaps not coincidentally, the other night that you think it may be a matter of a few years, 22 to 25, before Maitreya may be called upon to begin his teaching. Do you specifically believe there is significance to 2025? The next post. Oops. You just said it could be another 5 to 10 years. You don't know in this video about this topic. Sorry. I do listen. Well, that's good you listen. Just wrote that question first. Let's rephrase. Do you think there will be any significance in the progress of human growth and evolution towards becoming ready for Maitreya in 2025? Is there a reason Alice Bailey prophetically mentioned this year? All right, let's take a look at this. So any predictions that were in the Alice Bailey books that were written, was it 1919, I think, or right around World War I and World War II time frame. So if you know your European history, that's when that happened. Any predictions that she made were coming from her master, the master that was working through her, the master Jawal Kul. And from what I remember, he made a couple predictions in reference to the return of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. He said that the world teacher would re-enter the world somewhere around the last quarter of the previous century, of the 20th century, which Maitreya did on July 19th, 1977. And as so many Christians like to always say, well, I'll know when my Christ comes back. Well, the Christ also did say, I come like a thief in the night in an hour when you least expect it. So that's exactly what he did. But anywho, in fact, it was such like a thief in the night in an hour when people least expected, as nobody remembers that day. It's nothing, it's really weird. Nothing, I don't remember that day at all. But it was hands down, when we look back at this historically, we look at July 19th, 1977, when everyone really knows the significance of that day, they're going to be like, what was I doing on that day? You know what I'm saying? Most of us won't remember unless we maybe had a birthday that day or something like that. But yeah, so that already happened. And then the whole thing about 2025, when these masters make any kind of predictions, they don't really pin themselves down in terms of a specific date, even if it's kind of a year. It's kind of aroundish that time, maybe. So it could be plus or minus maybe 10, 15 years in terms of what is going on and what they can see. The masters see time as threads. I don't see time as threads. I see time the same way that everybody else does, very linearly. But that's an illusion according to what the masters would tell you. And they see time all happening at one time, that all happening now. Past, present, and future. And then the future they see as threads, different threads according to what Ben talked about. And they see all these different scenarios, some from the most likely scenario of manifesting to the least likely scenario, but they see it all happening simultaneously. So can you imagine having to retain all that? You know what I mean? And having to pinpoint something down about this is what's going to happen at this time. Now, the masters know that there are things in the future that will definitely occur. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when, such as the humanity bringing about peace. That is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Maitreya being out, known for who he is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But there are a lot of ifs in there too. You know what I'm saying? That pertain to that. Like, it might be this time, it might not be that time. So you'd have to really kind of talk to a master to really understand it. But once we see time the way that they see time, it'll make a lot more sense. But right now it's kind of, doesn't make a lot of sense to most people who are thinking time very linearly. But I would say if there's any significance to that time, it has to do with us moving, our solar system moving farther and farther away from the influence of Pisces and more under the influence of Aquarius. So according to Ben's master, over the last 500 years or so, every single day we've been moving farther and farther and farther away from Pisces. And that energies that created, the last 2,000 years. So energetically, everything in cosmos is energy. There is nothing in cosmos that's not energy. The self allows all that energy and that consciousness to exist, which really, I guess, is beyond energy. That's the space that allows it to exist. But consciously, there's nothing in life but energy. So anything that we build, whether it's, a structure, a city, a country's, constitution, to our political systems, to our economic systems, of course, to the markets that we have in place and so forth, they're all built under certain types of energy. And what has built everything that we see and is going on in our life now has all been built under the light and the energies of Pisces over the last 2,000 years. If you want to know what the energies of Pisces are in terms of what we've done as a humanity, just look back at the last 2,000 years of history. That's all been built and done under the light of the Piscean energy. And so, all the good and the bad, right? So there's been a lot of bad, but there's also been some good in there too, But if you look at, let's say, the Crusades, right? That was built under the light of Pisces. The Salem witch trial, the Spanish Inquisition, World War I and World War II, commercialization, which is really killing the vitality of humanity and so forth, is all built under the light and the energy of Pisces. Now, as each day goes on, we're moving more and more under this new light, which is coming from Aquarius. So right now, there's kind of a blending of those energies in terms of the consciousness of the people who are living on the planet. So you got people who are responding more and more to these new energies, wanting to see these changes, wanting to bring about justice, wanting to bring about peace, wanting to see the end of war and the end of hunger and so forth. Seeing themselves more and more as souls, perhaps, or whatever, in some instances. But, the vast majority of the people are very unconscious to what they're doing. They just want to see some changes out there. And then you have the reactionary forces who are still responding to the energies of Pisces. So right now it's kind of 50-50. So that's why you don't have the progressives just getting everything that they want, right? I mean, the United States is a textbook example of divisions in politics to where nothing's getting done for the people, right? I mean, you got the reactionary forces of the Republican Party and the slightly progressive party of the Democrats, which have their own reactionary forces too, mind you. And there might be a few progressives in the Republican Party, maybe, I guess, but predominantly they're just, those two parties are responding to different types of energy. And yet the needs of the people aren't being met. You see what I'm saying? So, but as time goes on, more and more, the reactionary forces are going to kind of try to keep everything the same, but they're going to lose because they're fighting against time. They're fighting against really the will of and the plan of the logos of this planet. You know what I'm saying? So they're not going to win out in the end, even as much as they want to keep everything the same. Nothing in life stays the same. So we're moving into this new time. And so I think this 2025 is when we're starting to move more and more and more in under that energy, which the energy is totally different than the last 2,000 years. So life on planet Earth 2,000 years from now will be probably as drastic of a difference between life today, especially in terms of the consciousness of the people, as the difference between 2,000 years ago and now. So, but what's life going to be like then? Well, the new energies is more cooperation, justice, sharing, synthesis, brotherhood, peace. Those are the qualities of the energies of Aquarius. Where we're in right now is the transition between those two energies, those two ages. And that's why we're having such problems, and it's such a tumultuous time. So that's what I would say would be the significant, but it's not specifically the 2025. And when I was mentioning the time frame, I was mentioning it more from the standpoint of, from my perspective, it's best to be patient and wait when it comes to this information, and not get too anxious about the timing of it, because it might be longer than we think. It might be less than we think. I don't know. I don't have a specific time frame on it either. I know it can't go on much longer based on the problems that are facing humanity must be solved, or it will be too late, and the masters won't let it go that long. So eventually we'll have to know who Maitreya is, you know what I mean? Or we won't solve the problems in time, and we'll go right off the cliff. And like I said, I know they won't let us do that, So in that regard, it's kind of like that. Now, the other thing too that the Master DK was talking about in terms of 2020 and this next decade, and maybe the decade after that, and so forth, is we'll start to experience life more creatively, individually, as just ordinary people. But it will create a renaissance of people's lives, and it will manifest in the arts as well as in people's lives. And we've seen the high flying artists of the Renaissance period, the Rembrandts, the Leonardo da Vinci's, even the Picassos and so forth, in terms of their art that they're doing. But most of us, when we go to, let's say, the Louvre, and we stand in front of the Mona Lisa, we say, "Oh, it's beautiful, that's nice, that's pretty, yay," and then we move on. Maybe are a little intrigued by the fact that they're seeing something that's known all throughout the world, but there's a lot more going on in that painting than just that. And so most of us are totally ignorant to the esoteric purpose of why somebody like Leonardo da Vinci painted that painting. But even Rembrandt had, in his paintings, there's esoteric meanings, and there's esoteric reasons and energies behind those paintings and so forth, that most people have no idea of what's going on in that painting. They just see art, but art is very spiritual in a way. And so, but in the future, the Master DK, when he was writing about that time, he also said something about the art of the future, and the difference between the art of the future and the art of when he was writing this information through Alice Bailey. Is he said the art of the future versus the art of today would be the same as the art of the future being as if it's, as an analogy, would be like building the building of the Sistine Chapel, which, if you know anything about that, was really an architectural masterpiece, and it's almost one of the 8th wonders of the world. That's how beautiful it is in terms of the architecture of that building. And just a kid playing with building blocks in the yard. If you know anything, remember building blocks, the little wooden blocks that kids used to play with? That's the difference between the two. So he also said that people will be creative in their own lives in a way that we cannot possibly imagine. So that's, I think, also, but it's going to come from when the principle of sharing starts to take place, people's needs will be met. Commercialization will start to lose its grip on humanity, and people will be truly free to be creative. And then we'll start to learn from these masters, learn from Maitreya about how to live, how to be creative, what to do in our free time. Because we'll have a lot of leisure time. And rather than just sitting around playing PlayStation, people will have an interest in fulfilling their lives in a way that they didn't have before. Because we'll have examples of these masters and what they're doing and how they're serving humanity. And of course, it will waken up perhaps people who had no interest in art or no interest in politics or in serving humanity in any kind of way. It will wake them up to, I need to do something about that. Coming from their heart, they'll have a heart's response to all this new information coming their way, and people will be thirsty for the knowledge that these masters have to give humanity in a way that we won't possibly imagine until we see it. But that's the sweeping changes that will happen over the next few decades. So hopefully that answers your question in a way. But the other thing I wanted to say too is humanity, according to Maitreya, is already ready for the teachings of Maitreya. It might not look like it, because we're in the throes of the death of our civilization, and all that means. We're in the throes of the divisions and so forth, and the inaction of governments, and the economic division, and seeing poverty, and seeing extreme wealth and so forth, and the pain and the injustice in that and so forth. We see it all the time. But according to Maitreya, we're ready, and if you look at what's going on also, from a technological standpoint, there's been tremendous growth over the last 50 years. I mean, sweeping changes technologically. You can't compare what the technology of today versus the technology of perhaps the 60s. I mean, it's almost science fiction in a way. Now, we're not flying to the moon in our own car or anything like that, but, technologically, we're way more advanced than we were back then. Even, the way that we see each other is very different than it was 50, 60 years ago. Minorities have more of a say in their life. They're freer. There's a little bit more justice, at least. It might not be perfect, but there's a little bit more justice than it was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s of just the last century. Sweeping changes. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? But we've made some progress. Then to look at also too, the voice of the people is waking up. And so when people ask, or they make comments and they say, well, there's like there was a comment that somebody asked or posted just the other day saying that there's zero evidence of Maitreya coming out. And I understand where they're coming from when they say this, because they've heard about this information for 40 years-ish, which this person said he did. And yet nothing's happened with it. From their eyes, nothing has happened, right? And I understand where they're coming from. I don't have any beef with what they're saying, because I truly understand from the bottom of their heart where they see and why they said and why they think that. But if you look at, you might not put the two and two together in this way. But if you know this information as I do, and you study this information, and if you have any kind of interest in it, or think there may be any kind of truth to this, you can start to maybe put the two and two together like this, right? So I couldn't offer this up in a court of law, but I'm just saying, just for you to consider and for you to think about. But if you look at the voice of the people, and how the voice of the people is getting louder and louder and louder all around the world, and it's not stopping. It's the direct result of Maitreya inspiring and galvanizing humanity in this way. And in almost, not all, but in almost all marches for peace, marches for social justice, economic justice, or whatever, the ending of war, if you knew it and you knew who Maitreya was, you could see him in the crowd, because he would be in there somewhere. He wouldn't be leading the crowd. He would be one of many people in the crowd, but his energy is inspiring those people for change in that way. And I've mentioned this before, just for you to look at and for you to consider, about what happened in Russia earlier in the year when Putin attacked Ukraine. Millions upon millions of people all around Russia marched against that crime, risked their lives, risked their freedom in order for that, for them and spoke out against a dictator like Putin. That would have never happened 50 years ago under Brezhnev or Khrushchev or whoever was in power at the time. Never would have happened. But yet, millions upon millions of people did this, and a lot of them got arrested, and a lot of them are probably still in jail because of it, but they did it in the name of peace. So, interestingly enough, Benjamin Creme, when he made the announcement of Maitreya speaking on TV, not long after that, it wasn't, I don't even think a year after that, he said that he had already been starting to speak on Russian television. So you might not believe this information as much as I do. You might be looking for more tangible evidence, but this is intangible evidence to just think about. Okay, I'm not saying that this means that, that's it, it's done, you should believe this. I'm not saying that. But if you look at the indirect cause of Maitreya speaking to the people in that way on Russian television, this is what's happening. People are waking up more and more and more. And I'm sure he was among the crowd. But eventually when Maitreya is known for who he is, and he's the voice of the people, what will happen, and this is a prediction that Maitreya, not Maitreya, but the Buddha made about Maitreya. He said that the Maitreya Buddha will inspire and galvanize humanity to build a brilliant golden civilization based on righteousness and truth. So we're in the very beginning stages of seeing the awakening of the people, the awakening of the hearts of the people for oneness, for unity, for all the sweeping changes that we're going to see from these energies that are going to be coming in more and more and more. We're seeing it happen before our eyes. You just have to look at it. Those who search for signs will find them. Search for it. See people marching for peace and know that that is the hope for the future. That's why Maitreya says all will be well. All manner of things will be well. It's because the people are waking up. You see? So anyway, hopefully that answers that question. I love everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you've listened this far, have a wonderful day. And I look forward to talking to you again in future videos. Take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.